My new axolotl is sick. Sick enough that I had to take her to the vet, but before we can get into that, we need to go all the way back to the beginning when I first got her. If you're new here, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss future videos. All this started 8 months ago when I was at my first reptile expo, and I ended up seeing this tank full of axolotls. I originally wasn't planning on getting one, but I eventually gave in and kept her in this temporary 5-gallon aquarium. After having her for a couple months, I began work on a new enclosure using a 55-gallon aquarium. I used a universal rocks background and modified it to account for filtration, and then attached it to the tank using silicone. With that done, I could move on to the scape using a couple pieces of eucalyptus root. I then went back with some expanding foam to help cover up the gaps and strengthen the scape. After carving it, I ended up painting it with a bit of Drylock to create a seamless look. I then added a couple rocks, and that completed the scape. Overall, I was super happy with it, but was excited to add the plants. After thoroughly cleaning the plants, I started to place them into the aquarium, with the pothos on the right and the fern on the left. I then went on to add the substrate before adding a couple aquatic plants to bring some life to the water area. Once that was complete, I could then fill up the tank and call it a day. Looking back, I'm super happy with how this turned out. Though it was a fairly simple build, I still like how it looked. But fast forward to a couple months later, and it's not looking too hot. As some of you may know, I took a large break from YouTube and ended up letting this thing go. As you can see, the algae is starting to take over the tank and the plants aren't looking too good, so we gotta get this thing cleaned up before I can add her in. In order to access the tank, I'll have to remove the lid. Luckily, the way I designed this is so that the whole lid can come off to make maintenance easier. Then I could go ahead and siphon out all of the remaining water. With the water drained, I came back with a wet paper towel and cleaned off all the glass before removing of the old plants. Though the fern on the left was completely dead, the other plants I had in the tank, including the purple waffle and the golden pothos, were still showing signs of life, so I decided to just trim them up and add them back into the enclosure. Most of the aquatic plants survived, but they needed a trim as well. Whilst removing the fern, it dirtied up the water area quite a bit, so I had to go and clean that up before continuing. When siphoning out the old water, it took a lot of the sand with it, so I went ahead and topped that off with some fresh sand. I poured a few cups of sand into the enclosure and used my hand to distribute it across the bottom. That was it for the cleanup, so I could go ahead and fill up the tank before putting the lid back on. With the tank filled up, I went ahead and added the water conditioner and then reinstalled the lid. Though the tank was a lot cleaner now, I still decided that it needed some more plants, so I went ahead and got a couple more pothos, as well as another fern for the left side. Most of the original plants died due to lack of water, so I'm hoping that these will thrive as I keep up on the water changes. Once the plants were added, the tank was complete, and I tested the water parameters before introducing Ember to her new home. It's been quite a few months of waiting to get to this point, but I think it was the right move to make sure everything was perfect. A couple minutes after adding her in, she decided to use the rock hide in the back that I made for her, which was super cool to see. After that, she started to warm up a bit and slowly creep out into the environment. Over the next few days, she started to warm up to her new home and began exploring it. She also started showing more interest in me, which was super cool to see. One cool thing with leucistic type axolotls is that if you hold a UV light over them, they'll actually glow a bit. For the next week or so, things were going great, and she seemed happy inside her new home, but that's when I noticed it. While interacting with her one day, I noticed that she had a small lump on the right side of her mouth. Originally, I wasn't too worried about this and hoped that it would go away, but it just got bigger as the weeks progressed. It got to the point where she couldn't fully close her mouth, and although she was still eating and being active, I decided to schedule a vet appointment and get it checked out. Typically, I don't like bringing my animals to the vet as it can stress them out, but in this case it was something I couldn't deal with on my own and needed help. In order to get her to the vet, I had to get her out of the tank, and as you can see, she was not having it. After a bit of wrangling though, I was eventually able to get her out safely. Once I had her in my hands, I moved her over to this temporary tub that I'll be transporting her in. It was becoming increasingly obvious that she wasn't happy with me, but this was something I wanted to get checked out in case it was life-threatening. After moving her safely into the tub, I covered it with a lid and a towel to make her feel safe and headed over to the vet. Luckily, the vet isn't too far from where I lived, and it was a quick 15-minute drive until we arrived there. Once we were inside, I could tell that she was starting to get a bit stressed as she wasn't moving around a whole lot. Again, I don't like bringing my animals to the vet for this reason, but if it's something I can't deal with on my own, then I almost have to do it. Luckily, we weren't waiting too long before the vet came in and said that she had an abscess on her lip. Thankfully, it was nothing life-threatening or harmful to her, and they said they could deal with it there. Here you can see where the bump is located on her lower jaw. Now this next part involves a bit of cutting flesh, so if you don't like that kind of stuff, I suggest you skip to this timestamp. Luckily it wasn't too bad, all they had to do was cut open the abscess and drain the pus. It's a little bit gross, but nothing compared to a Leachianus gecko pooping on your leg. That was borderline traumatizing. Anyway, once the abscess was drained, we were all good to go and started to head back home. Luckily for both of us, it was quite a short vet visit, and I was able to get her back home and back into her enclosure safely. Though it was a bit of a stressful trip for her and she was feeling a lot better, we weren't out of the woods yet. While they said that this was just an abscess, they said there's a possibility of a tumor being located behind it, and if the abscess came back, we would have to do surgery. Knowing this, the vet informed me that I'll have to do a little bit of at-home treatment with some antibiotics. Now I'm going to warn you all again, this next part involves needles as well as using it on worms, so if that bothers you, please skip to this timestamp. In order to get her the antibiotics that she needs, I'll use this syringe and fill it up a bit with some of the liquid. After that comes the not so fun task of injecting it into her food, which in this case is a worm. It's pretty gross, but it's something I'm willing to do to ensure her health. Alternatively, I could take the needle off of the syringe and inject it straight into her mouth, but this would cause a lot more stress on her as I'd have to remove her from the tank. After repeating this process over the course of 10 days, she's all better now and the abscess has completely disappeared. Luckily, it never came back and just ended up being a temporary problem. She can fully close her mouth again and she seems overall a lot more comfortable. It's been a few weeks now since I took her to the vet and she's still doing well, exploring her enclosure and devouring food. And luckily she was able to forgive me after putting her through all that stress. As for her enclosure, a couple of the plants including the fern died off again, so I'm planning on replacing those with different plants in the future. This was my first time ever taking an exotic animal to a vet, and I have to say it was a pretty good experience. Everything went smoothly and it's nice to know that I have an exotic vet in the area in case something happens to another animal. I love axolotls as they're my favorite animal, so making sure that both of mine are happy and healthy is my top priority. I find that axolotls are a lot more emotionally intelligent than other animals and a lot more than people give them credit for. Anyways, that's gonna do it for this week. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and Ember wants me to remind you to make sure you subscribe so that all of her stress wasn't for nothing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.